Give yourself a shoulder roll. And close your eyes. Take one deep breath. And let it out. Keep your eyes closed and think about where you will be 24 hours from now. Some of you will be on a plane, some in a meeting that will change nothing, some in a meeting that will change everything. Think about where you will be 5 years from now, with your company, your government, your school. Now, 10 years from now, where will you be? What will you be doing? And now think of one student that your work impacts, and one thing you can take away from today to benefit them 10 years from now. What is that thing? Who is that student? What size future will they have? Okay. And in that headspace, let's relax and sit down. Good evening, thank you to the USEF and to everyone at USEF, to the Honourable Commissioner for coming all this way with her team of Lagosians, one of whom I've met before, and I'm very glad to say that. From everyone who's come such a long way, I won't take much of your time. I also don't want to go over any of the amazing things that have already been said, so if my talk seems somewhat truncated, that's because there are things you already know and I don't want to go over them again. My name is Chimaechi Ochei. I'm from a company called Kio Global. We'll talk about how I got to found a company and what it does in due course. But the main thing I want to talk about is vision. You guys are all visionaries. We know that from the big ideas that have been tossed around today, the big discussions that are being had. You're visionaries for Africa because you love unlocking potential. It's a place with unlimited potential. And you're visionaries because you're educators. You love unlocking potential in people. Okay, so you're all visionaries. And my question constantly today is going to be, what are we looking at? What is our vision? Okay, start with a pop quiz. 3 visual culture Hollywood hits, Fifth Element, Deep Impact, and TV series 24. What do these have in common, anyone? What? No clues at all?
Time pressure.
Time pressure? Any advance on time pressure? Oh, no film buffs whatsoever. You guys are serious academics, aren't you? They all have African American presidents in them. And this was before the reign of Barack Obama, President of the United States. This was 97, 98, and 2001 to 2010. So popular culture drip-fed with this image before the reality came about, vision. I'm not saying there's a one-to-one cause and effect here, but I'm saying what you show is very important. It's very important indeed. Okay, moving on from there. How did I get to found this company? What does it do? Well, a funny thing happened in Lagos. Many funny things do, as we've heard. I myself was born and raised in the UK, but I was on holiday visiting relatives in Nigeria, minding my own business in 2008. I walked into a children's bookshop in Ikoyi, a great smart area of Lagos, many private schools, many public ones too, I'm sure. And this children's bookshop had 0 children's books with African children on the cover. 0 children's books with African languages on them or in them. This was 2008. I was working at that time with Random House, an international publisher, publishing a list of multicultural children's books in London. So you can imagine my consternation. So the least I could do was join the dots. So I source, distribute, and publish multicultural and multilingual education resources. The funny thing, that bit wasn't funny, but the funny thing was that Sir Ken Robinson, a former chief inspector for Ofsted here in the UK and a great educational mind, said in 2010, every country on the earth at the moment is reforming public education. There are 2 reasons for it. The first is economic. How do we educate our children to take their place in the economies of the 21st century? The second is cultural. how do we educate our children so that they have a sense of cultural identity while being part of the process of globalization? It was funny because Lagos and London had the same problem at the same time. We're at a point now in global history where we are more likely to be having similar issues in what's called the developed and what's called the developing world. We are actually experiencing very similar things. Shortage of champagne, in Nigeria, that's the problem. So, the answer, the game changer, may come from anywhere. We're in London right now, but we don't necessarily have the advantage by sitting here. And when you go back to your various locations around the world, you may not have a disadvantage or an advantage being there in how to solve this problem. This is a global issue. The importance of images, I'll just quickly go through 4 things. How many of you are concerned with pre-primary and primary? Show of hands. Okay, few. Nose wiping brigade. How many of you are concerned with tertiary, secondary, junior secondary, university, higher education? Okay. We're both in the same boat. Because in the early years, which are the formative years, and in digital culture, which we all live in, which is very informative, pictures and not words are the currency. Very few words, myriad of pictures. Someone has once said that a picture is worth 1,000 words. We're in a time where you're seeing 1,000 pictures a day. So how do we make sure we're looking at the right thing? How do we show something that will envision and build our children in a formative and informative environment? What happens when you're invisible? It's kind of the opposite problem of a digital culture. I read English literature, well, I've been reading English literature since I was about 3, but I officially read it at Cambridge in 2002 onwards, and unfortunately I was invisible to myself in my whole educational career. And it shows that, unfortunately, you can have the best education in the world and not once meet a friend in a book who looks like you do. That's a problem. Because there are people, as we've seen from beautiful images of Abuja, of great schools all over Africa, all over the world, we've seen there are people in high places doing wonderful things, but is that vision being passed down? Is it being shown to the children? And what's the effect of that going to be? What we can imagine, we can realise. I don't have to tell an educator that an environment of positive images, of encouragement, of images of success will boost the confidence and capacity of every child to achieve. I don't have to tell you that. So what are we looking at? What are we showing? What are we looking at? There is a tendency when talking about Africa, quote unquote, to be very journalistic, to be very statistical, to be very concerned by the facts and the statistics, which often tell very striking stories, sometimes harrowing ones. But actually, can you imagine what would happen to the UK education system if that's how we approached it, with this journalistic kind of statistical approach? The Gruffalo, Narnia, and Tolkien, none of them would exist. We would not have this rich literary and art history and culture that we are so proud of and export so well. I challenge you to think more broadly, think larger. You're here because you have a big vision about what can happen in Africa. But I'm saying think larger about the individuals that you're working for, that you're serving. What size future do you imagine for them? Okay, I'm going to talk you through a few images very, very quickly. Chimaechi Ochei, a Nigerian artist, it's a traditional Igbo village scene that she painted, and she was also asked to paint the Queen Elizabeth II in her Jubilee in 2002. She also lived in Suffolk for a good part of her life. A cross between Grace Jones and Indiana Jones, raised in Malawi, look into it. Keeping rabbits in Uganda. responsibilities. Tropical storm, getting home from school in a tropical storm. Power cuts, but how not to be afraid of the dark. Wildlife, birds from around the world. A giantess from Ghana with hiccups, problematic. And an A to Z of South African wildlife, led by a Swazi girl in rhyme. And that odd sensation when you come home from school and there's nothing to eat except a shiny red chili and it looks so good and then you're buying it. So, some images of imaginative resources. I don't know how many of you have read Professor Tooley's book, The Beautiful Tree. In that book, he was researching low-cost, high-quality private education, and his employer at the time was the World Bank, and they kept saying to him, these schools do not exist. These schools that you are standing in Hyderabad, do not exist. I've been on the cover of a book about Oxbridge entrance, and people point at that and say, that's not real, that's just a model. I mean, I'll take that compliment, but... And in certain circles, the work that you're doing, the stats that you have, the things that you've done, do not exist. Some people can't envision this, what we're doing right now. But we may be the future's best kept secret. The top 5 education conferences in Nigeria are only 5 years old. This is a movement that is young and impressionable, but it is there, it exists, and this is a really good secret to be part of.